things that Microsoft did in the '07 version that we still have in the 2010 version is they created a tables feature that really does a lot of things for us. And so I want to take a few moments and show you a little bit about that. Some of the things it does are things you could do in the past, but it's automatic for you instead. So first of all, I'm going to do it with a small spreadsheet here so you can just see the overall effect as I apply the table. And I am inside a spreadsheet and I've just clicked in an active cell of the spreadsheet. Now some of the data you look at or some of the books you look at will tell you to highlight the whole range of data. And of course Control A will do that once I'm in my data. But Excel is actually pretty smart. And if you have your cell selected somewhere within the data, just one cell selected, and you use one of these table features or some of the data features, Excel knows to look and it says, okay, here's the column that's blank. Here's the row that's blank. So it goes out and finds those blanks. And it says this is the range of my data. And I'm going to show you that here by going up and turning this spreadsheet information into a table. So I have my active cell in the data, just one cell highlighted. I'm going up to my ribbons and I'm going to choose my Insert tab. On the Insert tab, in the first grouping, it's called Tables. And right there I have Table. And it's going to help me create this table and it's going to apply all sorts of wonderful things to my spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on that. And see, there is this pop-up dialog box and it says, where's the data for your table? And it automatically found the range for me. That's because it went out and found that blank column and found that blank row and said, this is the end of that data. Notice there's a checkbox that says my table is headers. Excel's smart enough to normally figure out that that first row of data are header rows. Now always check that to make sure that it has identified that because sometimes it might not. So be sure. If for some reason it didn't pick up the right range, I can use my little red arrow button here and go out and highlight the range. So I can click that and come out here and highlight my range. But I don't have to, and I would just click the little red arrow again, it would take me back because it already found the range for me. So I click OK, and wow, look at this. I have formatting applied. Now this is highlighted, so let me just click on one cell so you can see what that formatting really looks like. I have header formatting. I have formatting every other column. I have drop-down arrows. These are filter arrows. You might recall those from our filtering section where I can go in and say, okay, I only want to see the people with 10% or 15% commission or so forth. So I can filter on my columns. They're automatically there. And also, when I am in my data, let me click outside my data. Notice my ribbons look perfectly normal. But when I click into my data, I get a Design tab on the ribbon. And this Design tab allows me to make changes. For example, if you'll look in the Design tab under Table Tools, I have a Table Styles Options. It knows I have a header row, so there it is. Banded rows is giving me the dark and light backgrounds on my rows. First column, if I had headers in that first column and I choose this, then it's going to format that to be separate from the actual data. Now in this case I don't, so I'm going to turn that one back off. Same thing for last column. The last column is really what this spreadsheet is about, the commission, so I might choose to leave last column this way. I can also band the columns just like I can band the rows. One of the greatest features of this is that I have a total row. If I click on that, it automatically puts a total row at the bottom of my data and it totals that last column. Then if I want to, I can click on that total and there's a drop down arrow next to it. And if I click that, I can change. Right now it's doing what is called a subtotal and it's adding up what's there, but I can choose to find the average commission. Or I can click on the drop down and find, the maximum commission. Most of the time you're probably going to use the sum function, but I do want you to notice that I use the sum function, but when I click on this cell, look at my formula bar. It's actually using a function called subtotal. And also notice that it has in brackets commission. It has named these cells in this column commission. So remember named ranges, I can name cell ranges. This has been named commission. So it automatically does that for me. The other thing is I can click in any of these other columns that might have a number, and I could, for example, sales. Maybe I want total sales here, so I'll come in here and do a sum there. And I have my total sales. So I have several options with this. If I go back up to my Table Tools tab, my design, which of course remember I have to be clicked inside my table for that to show up. I also have over here to the right table styles. And there's somewhere in the vicinity of 60 different table styles available to you. And I can click on this drop down. I can choose ones with light colors, and notice as I hover over them, I get a preview on my spreadsheet. That looks pretty good. I like the ones with the bright colors that stand out and have the light colors in the background. That's my personal preference. I have medium colors. I can come down here and see what my medium color options are. And then there's the dark color options too. I'm not a big fan of dark color with light text as data because sometimes that's a little hard to read. And it just depends on what you're trying to do. I'm going to come back up here and choose this one. And so there my data is, and I have applied the table to this, and I can make changes to it based on this information. One other thing that the data placed into a table allows me to do is I can quickly expand my table. Notice in the bottom right corner of my table there's this little triangle, and if I put my mouse over it I get a two-way arrow, and I can click and drag down, and here's what's really cool. My total row moves down too. So the total row will allow me to put in commissions here. So, and I'm not going to bother to type in a bunch of information here, but let's say this person had $35,000 in sales. They did really good. But oh, maybe they only have 5% commission. And notice now we've got their commission and it's automatically adding in. So it's doing this for me. One other thing that I would like to show you here, I'm going to go back to a file we were working on in another module, and we have formatting applied to this one. When you apply the table, it does not override your formatting. So for example, I have this 16-point Aharoni font here. So if I come in here and I go to the Insert tab and I go to Table, notice it picked up the range. Now it says I have headers. I'm going to leave that there. Let's see what it's going to do, because obviously I have a table header and then I have column headers. So let's just see what it's going to do there. And notice it's thinking that first quarter production was my header. So I'm going to come up here and say, nope, that's not the header, and turn that off. And my data is still Aharoni 16 point, but I now have table formats applied to the data. And if I'm clicking on the data and go back to my design tab on the ribbon, I still have the same things available to me. I can still put in my total row. And at this point this total appears to be counting. So let me change it to a sum, which with this data you really wouldn't probably do. That's probably why it counted, because we had a total right above there. But just wanted to show you that the formatting still applied. So this is total you probably wouldn't put in on this one. But notice I can say the first column, the last column, I can do banded columns, header row, total row, and so forth. So the first column, I would choose a format for it there, and I can come into my table styles, just like with everything else, and choose other formats. But it's going to retain the formatting I already had. If I don't want it to retain the formatting I already had, I can come in to my table styles, put my mouse over the style I want, right click, and say Apply and Clear Formatting. And now it takes on the new formatting. Did you notice that first quarter production that we had in cell A1 that we worked all at merging and centering disappeared when I told the table that my header row was not available, that it took out first quarter production? Remember we looked at it and said, oops, it didn't pull the right information, and we said, nope, we don't have a header row up here in the design tab we turned off header row. And first quarter production evaporated. It disappeared. Now I'm going to show you why you would use that highlight range option in the table feature. So first of all, I'm going to undo back to when I created the table. So I'm going to come up here to my undo button. And remember, it keeps track of what I've been doing. So I'm just going to come all the way down here to where it says create table. Click on that. And this is where we started, isn't it? And there's first quarter production. So if I come in and I go back to that insert tab, click on it, and I go to table, here's where Excel's picking up the range. And this is a reason why I would come in here and say, nope, that's not the range. I would click on here, click on the red arrow, come back and highlight A2 through E5. Click the down red arrow here to take me back into the dialog box. Now it's got the right cell range. It has headers. I click OK. First quarter production still there, and I have the correct header information here. And I can go on and manipulate with my table features. Occasionally you may decide, hey, I've got a table and I don't want it to be a table anymore. So here's my table that I just created, and I'm going to go back. I've clicked, first of all, in my data, right in the table. That gives me the Table Tools Design tab. And over on the far left in the Tools section of my Design tab, I have Convert to Range. I click on that. It says, do you want to convert the table to a normal range? And I say yes. And notice my drop down arrows go away. The formatting's still there, but what's happened is it is no longer seen by Excel as a table. So all the wonderful features that were available are no longer available to us in this particular cell range. So that's tables. This is a tool that does a lot of work for you. It's a great tool to have, and it takes care of a lot of the information we needed in our data table features in previous Excel versions.